Okay, welcome everybody. Parashat Miqes. We're going to be reading this Shabbat, and it's Shabbat Hanukkah, a very special Shabbat of this our entire year. I'd like to take a couple of minutes to talk about the Rambam and Rambam's introduction to the Hilchot Hanukkah. Now, you're familiar with this book. This is the book of the Mishneh Torah, and it's the Rambam's work that he put into 14 different books, which actually is all one big book, but it's called the Yad HaChazakah because of Yud Dalet, which symbolizes 14, and therefore there are 14 different books. And one of the books that he has is Zimanim, which is the time periods, the special times that you have during the year. And you would expect, of course, and it's true, that Hanukkah is one of the entries that the Rambam has in this book. So I want to read to you the introduction, which is very familiar to you because you know it from the time that you were in elementary school, or maybe even before. בבית שני, כשמלכו יוון, גזרו, בבית שני, כשמלכו יוון, גזרו גזרות על ישראל ובפלוגתם, ולא הניחו אותם לעשות בתורה ובמצוות. So it was in the time of the Greeks that at that time, of course, there was decrees that were made against the Jews, and they didn't allow them to keep any of the mitzvot. ופשטו ידם בממונם ובבנותיהם, ונכנסו להיכל ופרצו בו פרצות וטימאו הטהרות. And they did improper things with the women of those days. They robbed their money, they came into the Beit HaMikdash, and they defiled it. וצר להם לישראל מאוד. And the Israel were in tremendous distress. מפניהם, ולחצום לחץ גדול, and they oppressed them tremendously, עד שריחם עליהם אלוהי אבותינו והושיעם מידם. Until Hashem finally saved them from the hands of the Greeks. והצילם, וגבלו בני חשמונאי וכהנים גדולים הרגום, והושיעו ישראל מידם. And then the Hashmonaim saved Bnei Israel from the hands of the Greeks. Ultimately, they העמידו מלך בין הכהנים, and there was the Kohanim were the ones who became the rulers. וחזרה מלכות לישראל יתר על 200 שנה, עד החורבן השני. And everything came back to Bnei Israel, and they were sovereign over their own state for more than 200 years until the Churban Beit HaMikdash. You know this story? Yes? We've heard this story many times. We've heard it through the Gemara, we've heard it in Hanukkah, we'll hear it around the Hadlakat Nerot. But there's one unusual thing that we have to ask a question, and that's why does the Rambam cite this story here? Now, why would you expect him not to cite the story? You could answer. Yeah.
The halachot don't involve anything about it.
What does this have to do with halachot? The Rambam's book is a halakha book. It's a book that involves halachot and the halachot of Pesach, and the halachot of Shechita, and the halachot of Kibud Ba'em, all halachot. It's not a storybook. You would expect that this sort of thing would be contained in a storybook if he was writing Agadot, but that was not the Rambam's habit. In fact, look at the Rambam as he begins to talk about the halachot of Pesach, and he doesn't give you a summary of Yetziat Mitzrayim and how Bnei Israel were Mish'obadim in Mitzrayim and then they came out, and some sort of summary. We don't have that. And you look at the laws of Purim, which you know is a rabbinic holiday, and the Rambam there too, just several chapters before. He doesn't tell us about the story of Esther and Haman and Hashavuah. And certainly when you talk about Shavuot, there's no story that attaches to it. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, for sure not. Why all of a sudden does the Rambam decide that here he has to tell us the story of what happened at the time of Hanukkah? I'll take answers. Anybody? You like the question? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you like the question? Okay. I get 2 thumbs up. Okay, so let's think about this for a second. What's different about the holiday of Hanukkah and Purim? Okay, you want another question? Yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
One's spiritual and one's physical.
Nice. Okay, good. How do we know about the story of Esther and Hashavuah? How do we know about that story?
It was written
Where?
in
In the Tanakh. Which book? Which book?
Esther.
Right, Megillat Esther, right? And how do we know about the story of Pesach? From the Torah. From where? From the early part of the book of Shemot. We know about Yetziat Mitzrayim. And how do we know about the story of Sukkot?
Hashem.
Yeah, where?
In the Shema.
Well, that's actually later on where it says, Ki basukot hoshavti b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Yisrael. So do you see the common denominator between these three holidays? Sukkot, Pesach, and even Purim. What's the common denominator in where we know the story from?
Tanakh.
The Tanakh. It comes from the Bible, comes from the Tanakh. Where do we know the story of Hanukkah from? Yeah.
Sefer HaMaccabim.
Sefer HaMaccabim, right?
Yosefus.
Josephus, a little bit, absolutely. Where else?
Parashat.
You have to
Very
know.
good.
Turash Baal Peh, where specifically? Do you remember? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm listening. Robert?
Masechet.
Shabbat.
It's in
Masechet. It's on the tip of your tongue. We do it tonight.
Yeah.
Masechet Shabbat.
Okay.
The primary story of the story of Hanukkah is contained in Masechet Shabbat, the second Perek Bamim Adlikim, where the Gemara goes off and tells us, "My Hanukkah, what is Hanukkah?" And it tells us the story. That's the primary source, the primary rabbinic source, where we know the story of Hanukkah. So, how does this help us to answer the question? So why do you think that Rambam tells us the story of Hanukkah here, but he doesn't tell us the story of Purim, and he doesn't tell us the story... Yeah, go ahead, Yara.
Like agree with it?
To agree with it, you said?
Yeah, like that happened.
Right, good. Well, I don't know that the Rambam had to affirm the truth of the story as much as tell us the story. Yeah.
well, the Gemara, right? It had to give us an introduction to the events before it can give us the halachot.
Good. So why do you think that Rambam gives us the story, provides the story here, but he doesn't provide the story of Pesach and Sukkot and Purim? Well, here's a trick, okay? I want you to go back to the beginning, to the introduction of the Rambam to this book. And the Rambam says something that is really far-reaching. Some would even say audacious. Rambam writes this book, and he says in his introduction, I'm writing this book because times are tough. And not everybody has the capacity, the ability, the time to be able to learn Gemara and Shas and Poskim. So therefore, the Rambam says in his introduction, he says, therefore, I want you to read the Tanakh, because everybody has to read the Tanakh. That's Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim. And then you may have to skip all of the Gemara. But he says you may have to skip the entire Gemara, come straight to my book. And my book will be a summary of the Torah Sheba'al Peh, of the oral Torah that you need
The
to
door
know.
closes there, why don't we disconnect? Just wanted to.
So maybe we have a clue. You got it? Yeah, Robert?
There was no Hanukkah in the Tanakh,
And therefore?
and therefore there is no way to read the Tanakh and know about Hanukkah.
And therefore?
And therefore you have to include a remez to the reason why.
So the Rambam provides us, more than a remez, he provides us with the story. Because as he's writing his book, he's very much aware that people know the Tanakh. That's a prerequisite. You have to know the Tanakh. So I don't have to tell you the story of Pesach. I don't have to tell you the story of Esther. So that's why he leaves that unsaid. But when it comes around to Hanukkah, if somebody skipped the Gemara, he's not going to know the story of Hanukkah. So therefore the Rambam feels obligated to tell us this story right here. Okay? Let's go one step further. So why do we actually need to know the story of Hanukkah? Now that we know why he puts it here, why do you need to know the story of Hanukkah? Yeah, I am? No, why do you need to know the story of Hanukkah? Just light the candles.
See Hashem's miracle?
Good. Continue. To see Hashem's miracles. Go ahead.
It's like Jewish history.
Jewish, to know the history about people.
Yeah.
You need a reason to do something.
Why?
Is it like it makes it more like meaningful?
Meaningful, good. So let me, yes?
But I can, there's a counter to that because Hukim, we never know the reason why we do that.
Correct. So we're talking about mitzvot that are not hukim here, right? That's a good distinction. You're introducing us to a distinction. Good. So let me just take this one step out of this, and then we'll bring it right back here. we know that everybody knows that you have to pray in the morning, right? Let's say you come in to pray and you say all of the words, but you don't know what you're talking about. Have you fulfilled your obligation of tefillah? Kadena? Probably not. Why? I said all the words. I said every single word. What am I missing? The kavanah. The lev, the heart. Robert.
But you still have the kavanah to go to shul every morning because you want to pray.
You get a mitzvah for that. But have you accomplished the mitzvah of tefillah? Probably not. Because in the strict terminology we call this, there's ma'aseh mitzvah and there's the kiyum mitzvah. Ma'aseh mitzvah means the action. The action that you do in order to do a mitzvah. That's the action. That's the physical part, the saying part, the doing part. But then there's the kiyum mitzvah. The kiyum mitzvah is the fulfillment. And where does the fulfillment take place? I mean, how does the fulfillment of the mitzvah take place?
In your heart.
In your heart and your mind. You need those two things coming together. Somebody who just says the words without the fulfillment, without having the kavanah shebalev, which is what Rachel had mentioned before, that you need that kavanah shebalev, he hasn't completed the mitzvah. It's just like the person who comes to you and says, I'm so sorry for what I did to you. But they don't really mean it. So that apology is meaningless. Or, even better, somebody who does teshuvah, or ostensibly does teshuvah before Yom Kippur, and he says, Ashamnu bagadnu gazalnu tibarnu dofi v'nashon, and he goes through a whole list of things, but he doesn't think about it, he doesn't relate to it, he has nothing to do with it. That's not teshuvah. Teshuvah means doing the action and having an accompanying feeling of regret and remorse and resolution that I'm going to do things differently. Now we can understand why the Rambam insisted on putting the story of Hanukkah here. Because when we light the candles, or we say Hallel on Hanukkah, candles in the nighttime, Hallel during the daytime, it needs to be accompanied by an understanding of what happened. Because otherwise, the action of lighting the candles, the words, the uttering of the words of the Hallel are empty. They're just words. They're just actions without the story that accompanies the Hanukkah mitzvot. We're missing the kiyum shebalev. We're missing that fulfillment. So to put this together, therefore, it works like this. The Rambam thinks that every single time, and of course Jewish law is permeated by this, every single time, every mitzvah that we do, that has to be accompanied by a feeling. Without the feeling, the mitzvah is naked. And and when it comes around to the other holidays, the Rambam presumes that we're going to read the Tanakh. We'll know what the story is. And that story has to help us to celebrate the holiday in a more correct manner. With Hanukkah, since that story is not contained elsewhere in the Torah, in the Torah, so the Rambam says, I have to tell you the story, because otherwise your kiyum ha-mitzvah will be lacking. The fulfillment of the mitzvah will be lacking. And that's why the Rambam begins the halachot of Hanukkah in a way that he doesn't do in other places, which is tell us the story first.